This case arose from a fairly complicated land deal involving the sale of shares in a syndicate which owned land in Sydney in return for an amount of cash, and also in return for the seller acquiring the licence to operate Mr. Whippy vans, of all things, in Papua New Guinea. Some of the land interests were transferred, but others were not, and ultimately the purchaser sued. In the meanwhile, the seller had transferred the land to someone else, so the judge couldn't be asked to give specific performance of the contract. All that could be done was an award of damages. One aspect of the damages was uncontroversial. The purchasers should receive damages equivalent to the value of the land that they would have acquired. However, they also sought and received damages for the income that would have been produced if the land had been transferred to them. The monthly rental income to be reduced by the land was very clearly known to the parties and was in fact part of the contract. In other words, they were asking for expectation damages, damages that didn't arise from any actual loss that they'd suffered, but which rather arose from the gains that they would have obtained if the contract had been delivered, but which they did not in the end obtain. To decide this question, the High Court relied on the Old English rule in Hadley and Baxendale, which says that damages are awarded for any harm that arises naturally from the breach, but also from any harm that was within the contemplation of the parties at the time of the contract. Applying that rule, Chief Justice Gibbs said there can be no doubt that the loss to the respondent of the product of the interest in the land, if the transfer were not delivered as promised, was not only foreseeable, but in fact contemplated. From this case, we learn that expectation damages can be obtained in contract law, but they are subject to the rule in Hadley and Baxendale, just like any other head of damages. So the expectation damages have to relate to future damages that are not merely an optimistic hope and not set out in general terms, but which were genuinely foreseeable and preferably actually contemplated by the parties.